This is just another wrestling podcast featuring Scott Sudakov and Daryl Hatfield. Just another wrestling podcast.
Boring, right? So boring. Fucking sucks.
Hey, it's a working title. Just another wrestling podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Scott Sudakov and Daryl Hatfield.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into just another wrestling podcast, post-WrestleMania edition. Scott Sudakov, Daryl Hatfield with you right now. Before we get into things here, find us on Twitter. Daryl's at D_Nuggets. I'm at Sudakov, and the show account at JAW Podcast. We are we're taping this right now, just about 20 minutes after the conclusion of Night 2 of WrestleMania 36. And man, what a weird weekend it was. Daryl, I'm going to start off here and just kind of with my initial thoughts on how things started yesterday. You know, you had the normal pay-per-view disclaimer, FBI warning, no unauthorized reproduction of this event, all that stuff that you always see. And then, what did it go into next? It went into the montage of America the Beautiful, which is then at first it hits you and you go, wow, they're showing old video of America the Beautiful, who was on there: Willie Nelson, Little Richard, Aretha Franklin, Nicole Scherzinger, Michelle Williams, all the different people who have done it over the years. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of well-known names that were in the video, and it hits you right there because you're like, well, I know why they're showing a montage of this, because they're not going to have a performance live. Like, that's normally the first thing you would see is a big shot of the stadium. If the weather was nice in Tampa, there'd be blue sky, sun shining, 80,000, whatever amount of people, and then a piano starts playing and America the Beautiful goes, and you start to get those goosebumps. And maybe that's the first time you see the entire stadium if you hadn't watched the pre-show or whatever it might be. So at first it was kind of depressing. It was a little sad. Then I think it transitioned into the Stephanie little quick message that she had, all well and good. And then it went into what was to be the normal pre-produced open to WrestleMania, using the pirate ship theme, the Tampa theme, a lot of footage. Obviously they shot with different people maybe months ago, definitely weeks ago, probably months ago, with Becky and Charlotte and Roman and all of them in their pirate gear and a voiceover and all this that, apparently they did not edit that they didn't change that open. And so you're watching that, at least I'm watching that, and I got lost in it. And towards the end, the final shot is looking over Becky's shoulder to a little volcano, I think it was, and it imprints WrestleMania. And all of a sudden, I remember, this is yesterday, I get the goosebumps going, all right, here we go. And then it's, and now WWE presents, Snickers present WrestleMania. And normally you're about to be hit with pyro and excitement. And just for like a split second, I allowed myself to think that everything was normal. And then all of a sudden it just comes into the PC. Michael Cole, welcome to WrestleMania. Nothing else. And it was definitely a downer, and it took a couple of matches, or at least a little bit of time on the first night yesterday to go, okay, this is what it is. Watch it, be entertained. What about you? What was your initial kind of feelings with things yesterday?
So when they did the America the Beautiful thing, that was awesome. That was very well put together. Enjoyed that. And like you said, it was the first time where you're tuning into WrestleMania, and when you think about WrestleMania, you don't always remember, like, they start with America the Beautiful every time. You sort of forget that, and you remember every year when you hear it. Again, that was sort of a moment of realization, like, oh yeah, this year is way different. They have to use all the old stuff. But it did get me like a little excited, like, all right, we sort of got, and I'm not going to call it a crappy WrestleMania, but we didn't get a true WrestleMania this year. It's probably going to be insane next year. So that's sort of how I started looking at things, so I didn't spiral into a deep depression.
Yeah, they're gonna make up for it one way or another. Whether they can make up for it maybe with a bigger SummerSlam, if possible, or a bigger Survivor Series, but certainly WrestleMania 37 in Los Angeles, they're gonna do as much as they can to make that event make up for what was lacking this year.
Yeah, and then when I was watching the intro and it was building it up, like I started bracing for it, because I'm like, what I always remember is as soon as that intro is over and they do the welcome to WrestleMania, the crowd is on fire. And even if you're at home, you get excited because there's 100,000 people going insane at a place, and realizing like, am I going to get that hyped for this? No, because it's going to be in the Performance Center, and they had like some laser lights, but that was, like you said, that was about it. There was no fireworks.
They dressed it up as much as they could with the lasers and the LED boards, and they put the WrestleMania sign that was the one they were using to hang above the arenas on Raw and SmackDown. They put that, up in the Performance Center. So they did as much as they could to dress it up. Obviously, they could only do so much to dress up the building that they were in. And here's the thing. In the end, you have to kind of grade this whole thing relative to the circumstances. So I'm sure there's a lot of people saying this is the worst WrestleMania ever. And again, I think I said this a couple of days ago. Well, no shit. It's not fair. I mean, maybe it's not. Maybe there probably are people who are saying that's not the case. They might still say, WrestleMania 11 still sucked more than this. There's a possibility of that as well. WrestleMania 2000 wasn't that great either. You could make an argument that these 2 days were better than that one night in Anaheim back in 2000. So
I actually rewatched that last night after Mania Part 1. I rewatched 2000 just for the heck of it. Not that good.
Yeah. Exactly. That's nothing that great, which is surprising because you would think WrestleMania in 2000 would have been the pinnacle. Granted, a year later is when it hit, so it kind of it made sense that in 2001, fine, that was the pinnacle, or at least at that point was the top event that they had ever put on. So let's talk about how this event went down. Things started with night one. They had the women's tag team title match that started with the Kabuki Warriors versus Nikki and Alexa. And I mentioned again, it took some time to get into things, so it was tough to watch this match. It was tough for that to be the first match out. I mean, they did their job. They worked hard. It was entertaining enough. I think if this match was happening in normal circumstances, there'd be a big light shown on Nikki Cross and kind of maybe her moment to do some big things. Alexa has obviously had several moments over the years. WrestleMania, she was the host of WrestleMania last year. She had a title match with Nia Jax a couple of years ago, so she's had her moments. And I think the big thing that comes out of that match is the fact that maybe we'll be seeing Asuka and Kairi Sane separate and go into some singles matches, because I think there's a lot of intriguing things that can happen in the singles matches with those two, especially with what we saw later on with who won and who defended their championships.
Yeah, I had Nikki and Alexa Bliss winning just for that fact, because I think Kairi and Asuka have to branch off on their own now, like you said, because there's a lot of fresh new matchups, and they really weren't doing much with them as the Kabuki Warriors together. They're just I feel like Asuka's kind of been mishandled since she came up to the main roster. She was okay for a little bit, but they sort of like fumbled with her, and I don't know, that there is something weird that goes on. Someone's really over in NXT, the crowd is hot for them in NXT. They usually get a big pop when they debut, but a lot of them then get cooled off pretty quickly when they're on the main roster for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a different audience still, no matter what. Coming from NXT, you're going to get that 200, 300 people who, a lot of them are at every single taping, every single NXT, and they're going to have their favorites. So it's such a different animal than when you go to Raw or SmackDown, that they're just not going to be booked the same no matter what, because it's just a different animal. And yeah, I mean, I can't go any deeper into that analysis without really knowing any ins and outs of what's going on. And just a lot of people don't seem to connect the same way. And then you see with Finn Balor going back to NXT how good that is for him, because maybe some guys, some of the ladies, they just, the way that they're presented works better in that environment. And yeah, I mean, I don't think that's the case with Asuka, though, because when Asuka debuted on the main roster and they kept her undefeated, they kept her kicking ass, and even though she lost to Charlotte at WrestleMania a couple of years ago, they could have kept her going pretty strong. I mean, I do think maybe there's that language barrier that some people in the back kind of maybe prevents them for pushing her kind of to the forefront more than she is. So again, I'm interested to see what they do kind of moving forward. I'd like to see Kairi and Asuka be separated.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Let's continue on with what happened on night one. Elias and King Corbin just kind of had a match. No big deal. Corbin was expecting Elias not to be there. He shows up anyways, and Gronkowski wasn't involved when he thought that might be a part of it. And Elias gets a win, kind of there. No big deal, yada, yada. A match that could have been skipped, we can say.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Not to denigrate the two of them. I mean, they did their job, but sort of didn't need to be on the show to advance anything, that is.
And also, when you think about Elias, talk about someone who really needs a crowd for his gimmick to play well. Like, if he came out playing music to... Because he did a little concert last year, right, at WrestleMania? Yeah, and Cena. Well,
he did the whole thing in the ring where it's led to Cena coming out as Thugonomics Cena. So he had, he was kind of in an important spot there last year. Obviously, this year, exactly, not able to have. Obviously, if he's going to be playing the guitar and singing a song, it'd be nice to have a crowd there. They didn't do that anyways. He just came out, just had the match. So again, another guy that seemingly has potential to do some things and kind of stop and start over the last couple of years. And Corbin continues to be his heel self, and he keeps getting beat and keeps getting beaten up, and they can just keep doing that for the next couple of years if they want to.
Yeah, and I was surprised that Gronk was not involved in that. As soon as Corbin came out and said, Elias isn't here, he's not here, I was like, oh, this is Gronk's first match.
That would have been right. Gronk comes out of nowhere, rolls him up, gets a pin, just like that. Would have been funny. I guess we can mention. I guess we might as well slip this in now, and it doesn't matter about night one and night two. But we saw Mojo Rawley win the 24/7 title, pushing Gronkowski out of the way on night one, and then on night two, Gronkowski is your new 24/7 champion. You know why they did it, obviously. It's to get the ESPNs, the Foxes, all the sports sites to tweet it out, show it, and I'm sure it's working, and I'm sure there's wrestling fans who are upset that Rob Gronkowski just won a WWE championship. And if there's anybody who fits the carny-like nature of professional wrestling, it's Rob Gronkowski. So I don't know what you're upset about. Yeah. Plus, he's also won a championship that has virtually no meaning.
Yeah, and it's not like he's the first football player that's ever crossed over to pro wrestling. I mean, that used to be like Ernie Ladd is a great example of a guy who was a pro wrestler or was a pro football player and then got big as a pro wrestler. Like, I think Gronk is a goofy idiot, so he might play well on WWE TV. Got to give him a chance.
Oh, I mean, he fits it perfectly. That's exactly what WWE is, what wrestling is, and anybody who claims otherwise is taking professional wrestling too seriously. So we'll move on, and what match we want to talk about next? Let's see. How about that ladder match? The SmackDown Tag Team Championship ends up being one-on-one. No, not a non-tag team match for the Tag Team Championships. Given the circumstance, I have absolutely no issue with it. I don't think anybody should have any issue with it. If it was on a regular, if it was in a regular situation where they decided to do that, then sure, I could see questioning that. But in the end, I mean, they just crashed and burned and had a unique finish I don't think I've ever seen before, where they all were fighting for the coat hanger that was holding the belts, and Morrison just ripped them off and fell back on a ladder and had them. So it was a unique finish in that way.
Yeah, the finish was pretty innovative, and I had no doubt going in that those three guys are going to put on a show. The match did deliver. Super entertaining match. Crazy stuff happened throughout. I do think that they had crash pads, especially during that one Uso bump on the outside where we didn't.
Yeah, where you didn't see it, and in that situation, if they can take advantage of that, then do it all you can. There's no reason to make guys fall on unprotected surfaces when it's taped 10 days in advance and there's nobody in the crowd.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That that was the most obvious one that I saw, but I'm wondering if it did happen like in a couple other matches that we just didn't catch. Who was it? Someone did a flip over. That was on a Raw, I think. Like one of Montez Ford.
Montez Ford did something or other where he flipped out of the ring and landed straight on the ramp, where it looked like Austin Theory was supposed to catch him. But we don't. I mean, again, we don't know for sure. To me, it looked like the whole plan was for him just to crash and burn and land like he did. But
that one looked rough.
So in the end, Morrison wins it, and so Miz and Morrison retain the SmackDown championships. It was a match that was enjoyable without the crowd. I didn't find myself missing the crowd in that instance because there was enough going on, enough action back and forth. Obviously, there would have been plenty of holy shits and this is awesome chants probably during that match, which I guess would have added to it. But I think considering just the nature of the action going on, a match that didn't suffer because of no crowd.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like, I was glued to the TV the whole time, and I didn't need anybody in the crowd yelling as loud as they could to tell me that this was good.
Exactly.
Like it's more like when we were talking about Elias. That's the match that needed the crowd, because they're serviceable workers, but they're not doing anything that Kofi and Morrison can do. So they need that little extra crowd affirmation. But yeah, the ladder match, I think as a pure wrestling match, I think the ladder match was my favorite match of the weekend. Close with the Orton. I did like the Orton and Edge one, but the ladder match, that was I was into that the most.
Let's go to the Intercontinental Championship. Sami Zayn ends up retaining the title against Daniel Bryan. This match was fun because Sami plays a really good chicken shit heel. Then he gets in the ring and can have a very good technical match with Bryan. And also this match had just more energy around it because you had Cesaro, Nakamura, and Gulak all around the ring yelling and getting involved. So that match wasn't bad either without the crowd, because there was that extra energy around the ring, and then you can see how good of a guy in the ring Sami Zayn is. Obviously, we know how good Bryan is, and Sami getting a nice win to stay champion. Very interesting to see how that's gonna develop moving forward.
Yeah, and that is a good point about the match just having overall more energy, just due to the numbers. Does WWE take that and learn from that? Did they notice that as well? Is that going to be the feedback about that match? Are they going to go, as we move forward into potentially having more empty arena shows, are they going to go a little more faction heavy? Because those matches will come off better if you have, like, say you put Undisputed Era on Raw. You're going to have 3 dudes watching singles matches on the outside, yelling, trying to cheat. You don't, again, the crowd always helps in that situation, but you don't need the crowd as much because there's so much going on the screen. There's at least some humans that are super excited over what the outcome is going to be. And you get sucked in a little when you're watching that. And
yeah, that does make sense. I think if they're able to do any taping in the near future, that's not a bad direction to go. Is that, Rollins has his group of people. Owens and the Street Profits have kind of worked together at times. So I think there's a way that they could mix and match people to have little mini groups. Obviously, Gulak with Bryan, and tag teams can be out together. You mentioned the Undisputed Era, so I think there's something to that. I think that would add a little bit of energy to different matches to have more people out there. It almost makes you think, make every match a lumberjack match, but obviously you're not going to go that far and have 10 people outside around the ring. I guess the question is right now is, when are they going to be able to, if at all, actually tape new matches, new footage outside of, I think, what is coming tomorrow on Raw. They have already taped. Don't know if they're ever going to be able to do anything else in the near future. That's part of the problem, I think, with everything moving forward.
Yeah. I do think we are going to get like a bit of a dark period coming up. But
it's gonna have to be at least a couple of weeks, one would think, at this point, just because where they can get, and I think for a couple of weeks they can certainly do it, because they can do Skype interviews. They can interview the new champions and air them on Raw, air them on SmackDown. There are enough guys, I think, that live probably near the headquarters and the studios that they can get some people in and out and do some things like that, that they can get through a couple of weeks. And I think that's probably the way to go right now. That I can live without new matches for a couple of weeks right now, for sure. Especially if they decide that in 2 weeks they go, all right, at the risk of pissing people off who paid money to watch this event 2 weeks ago, well, we're going to air the Goldberg-Braun match on SmackDown. Granted, it's only 2 minutes long, so no big deal. But they are in a position where they can most certainly do that, and it wouldn't shock me. And if it pisses people off who's paid up to $50 potentially to watch, you watched it, but you did that because you watched it first run. You saw the first airing of it. And kind of, that would be the breaks there. Unfortunate for those people, I guess, if they were to care. So,
and then another interesting thing that happened during WrestleMania, the commercial for Money in the Bank a month from now. I was
May 11th, I think, right?
Yeah.
And as far as I know, it's already been canceled from where it was supposed to be, I believe. I'm going to try to look that up right now, actually. I feel like I read that was already where it was planned, Sunday, May 10th. The Wikipedia already says it's at the Performance Center in Orlando. It was supposed to be in Baltimore. I can't see exactly, but as of a couple of days ago, it looks like there were stories popping up that it is definitely not happening in Baltimore. Obviously, it's not happening in Baltimore. So if it's happening in Orlando. The question is how are they going to get to that point right now? How are they, if they have 2 weeks off or they can't do anything new? Granted, they could still build storylines and actually build matches without matches, as weird as that sounds. It's interesting that they're gonna, full steam ahead. AEW apparently is too, in terms of the fact that they have taped matches that can get them all the way through May, according to what they were able to do. So the show must go on.
We are heading for interesting times. What's the next match that we're And
Let's go to Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins, where Kevin Owens ends up winning a match twice, gets wins by disqualification first, gets the match restarted as no DQ, jumps off the top of the WrestleMania sign, has his WrestleMania moment. Really love the post-production ad of the bell noise on the bell shots to the head. When they hit each other with the bell, it does sometimes ring, but not as clear as it did yesterday. So that was definitely added, which is good. They should have done it. It was a good little touch. My criticism with the match was that I mentioned it on the preview show, is that I wanted to see them just fight each other. There was a little bit too much of wrestling in the match. Small criticism, because obviously at the end it started to get a little more brutal with the end. So small there, but Owens gets his win, his first WrestleMania win.
Yeah, that was one that I don't think the not having a crowd hurt the match itself. I think they did put on a good show. The spot jumping off the WrestleMania sign was awesome. That's for that moment, and then Kevin Owens getting his win with the stunner. Those are the two parts that, like, the crazy crowd reaction to that hurt it.
Yeah, not having the crowd be able to react to Owens hitting a stunner and getting the 1, 2, 3. If Owens does that spot or something similar to it, jumping off the sign in front of the crowd, it's going to get a holy shit reaction, much like what happened with Shane and who did Shane face at WrestleMania last year?
Miz,
exactly.
Yeah.
with the suplex off of and this. Of course, I think I told you the story about that. Is I went back to the concession stand, which was the entrance to it was right where that match ended. I went back at the beginning of that match thinking, okay, I do want to see this match, but I got to pick one to go. And that was the one I went for. I was in line, the entire match. I come out at the end, I just ate the food too in the concession, be like, whatever, I'm just going to eat it now and then walk back. And as soon as I'm done, I hear the match end, I walk out, and I can't go any further because they blocked all foot traffic because The Miz and Shane McMahon are lying in the rubble right there where I'd walked by 20 minutes earlier. I was able to get a few pictures of Miz getting up out of the rubble and all that. But that's my little story. And then I ended up walking by Byron Saxton, and Linda McMahon walked by me at that point as well. And I was like, hey, hi. I said, what's up, Byron? And he gave me a little fist. It wasn't like a fist bump connection, but it was kind of like, sort of like a acknowledgement. So
yeah, that is last year. That's a
great story.
I was surprised at how close you could get to some of the announcers and talent when you walked back in that area.
Right, because you could see a little production. They had a little sneak away behind that area where they were hanging out in between matches that they weren't calling. It's very interesting. You could see them on the headsets, waiting, listening. So it was very cool to see that. How they set that up. So that's a little look back to last year. And so I'm looking at the list of matches here. Oh, we're forgetting one big one from yesterday, the Raw Women's Championship match. Becky Lynch retains. Not that I'm surprised that she retained. It was just kind of a lackluster match. I mean, not terrible, but maybe quicker than one would think. And you had Becky sort of just surviving to win. She beat Shayna, but she survived Shayna more than that, right? Countering the choke into a pin. So that really, it really makes you want to see them have a proper rematch in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
Definitely a match that needed a crowd.
Well, that's a good point. Maybe that's why they went with that finish instead of having Becky win decisively with her finisher. You have her sneak out. Now Shayna has a reason to say, Becky, you walked out against me. Can go back to that well. And that does need the crowd, because one of the reasons why Becky is so hot is because of her crowd reactions. You take that away, she's good in the ring, but it's her character work that really got her over.
For sure. And one of the things that Shayna can come back with whenever they decide to do, if they decide to keep them going, is that she can mention, hey, when you beat Ronda, this happened. And now when you beat me, you got lucky. I was choking you out and you just happened to roll, bad break for me. Obviously I lost, but you didn't really beat me, and let's do it again. Let's fight again. And hopefully we will see that again. And it's still, again, my hope is that we're going to eventually see Becky and Ronda, and that's got to be something that in the universe of the WWE needs to be tied up, I think, needs to be ended, unless Ronda just decides that she never wants to come back, which I can't imagine is the case, but I still would like to see that. And I think a lot of people would like to see that whole four horsewomen versus four horsewomen idea, as forced as that could be. I think it would still garner enough interest from the fan base. So they got some things to work on heading into WrestleMania 37, I think, a year from now.
Yeah. Do you think they'll have Ronda and Becky at WrestleMania, or do you think that'll be the four horsewomen match? Or the four horsewomen match?
I would say you would. You know what? I think you do the four horsewomen match at WrestleMania, while you could prop up another show with Becky and Ronda.
Yeah. Going
1-on-1. That would be my thinking of it, but I could see it being totally reversed because, a year from now. I haven't seen Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke work recently. I remember not being too impressed just yet. They didn't seem like they were ready to be on the same level as someone like Shayna and Ronda, obviously, and then of course not on the same level as Becky, Charlotte, Sasha, and Bayley. So it could happen maybe at a smaller show. So I talked myself into not putting that at WrestleMania. But it's something they can have in the future. And again, Becky Ronda, though, to me has to happen at some point to close that loop.
Yeah, especially since they're still showing the footage of how Ronda wasn't really pinned last year.
Okay, I think we're gonna dedicate this next part of the show to two of the biggest talking points, not two of the two biggest talking points that will come out of this weekend. That is the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse. So let's start with the Boneyard match, which was on night one. It ended night one, which was smart to make that the main event of the first night. And it was what we thought it would be in the sense that it was produced like a movie. It wasn't a wrestling match. It was a fight. There was no commentary. There was a musical score underneath it. And it was as campy and as cheesy. And they embraced it all the way, which was the right thing to do. And God, was it entertaining. And I know there are some people who didn't like it. And I can understand not liking it when you're comparing it, when you're saying, when you're looking at it as there's supposed to be matches in the ring and we're supposed to pretend this is real. Well, guess what? It's not real. So just enjoy it. Have fun with it. And it's not like things like this has not happened in the past. Of course, everyone's going to say, this is just like the Hardy stuff, which is something I said as well, just like the Hardy Broken Universe Compound, whatever it's called stuff. But it's not as if they haven't had matches in the past that were cinematically produced. Matt Hardy didn't invent it. He may have mastered it, but he didn't invent it. And not to mention, Jeremy Borash, who was a big part of producing those for TNA, was one of the big people producing the Boneyard match for WWE now. And that's pretty evident in what we saw. So I was entertained from start to finish. Undertaker riding in on a motorcycle. I mean, like, as stupid as he looks doing that, he comes in Metallica song playing, and it's so ridiculous. It was awesome. And if to me, if you couldn't be entertained by that, then you went into it with that idea already. You went into it going, I'm not going to like this.
Yeah, I'm completely with you there. Even how it started, where the hearse pulls up, it's playing the
the old school Undertaker music, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, old Undertaker music. He's gonna come out wearing his old costume or whatever, and then it's AJ, and that was great. And he had a great look on his face. It was great.
Oh, he plays so. Everybody lauds AJ's in-ring work. He's a very good asshole too. He is really good at being an asshole. He's
as good of an asshole as he is as an in-ring worker.
Yeah, like it's total package there. And Undertaker
asshole AJ.
Yeah, and Undertaker sort of going with his American badass. Like he had some of the he teleported. It was a
hybrid.
Yeah, that worked perfectly in this. The soundtrack added to it. I thought I was super entertained. There were a ton of quick cuts, and that really works well for the Undertaker now because he's getting up there and he's got a lot of miles on him. They made him look like $1 million in that thing.
There's no reason for him to have another match inside the ring.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, if they just did this with him, and based on what they did with that and the Firefly Funhouse, is like, all right, well, if you can't do in-ring matches for a while, there's no reason to not build up to one of these super produced wrestling films a month that'll keep fans interested, because I'm sure the crew on site for that wasn't that large. You need the lighting guys, you need a couple cameramen and producer, director, and the talent. They didn't have a ref, so there was no need. So that's one body you get out of there. But
first of all, it just shows the ability that the production team has to be able to do something like that last night, and what they did tonight with the Firefly Funhouse was incredible. And again, just if you watch it for what it was, it's entertaining, and that's it. It wasn't supposed to be serious. They didn't make that in this to be serious. It was supposed to be cheesy.
Yes.
And I think it came off like that. I think the best things to do in those situations is embrace those situations, and they did that pretty well, and both guys played the parts well, and you had Gallows and Anderson get involved, and Druids, and is AJ Styles dead? Is Luke Gallows, and
Carl Anderson.
Are they dead? Is everybody, and it's funny. And how about AJ at the end when he's buried? He still has his fist up out of his hand up out of the dirt. Just funny. And then at the end, Undertaker raises his arm and fire shoots out and he drives away.
And his logo ends up on the barn.
Exactly. Granted, sure, they can't do that every week, and every match can't be that. I get it, obviously. But once in a while, to have fun, it's pro freaking wrestling. It's supposed to be fun and entertaining. And if you take it, it's not 1980s, it's not 1987 NWA anymore, okay? It's a different world.
Yeah.
Right?
And especially with WWE, how many hours of programming do they have to fill? You can't expect them to just go, like you said, 1987 NWA style for, what is it, Raw's 3 hours, NXT is 2 hours, SmackDown's 2 hours, plus we had 8 hours, or 7.5 hours of WrestleMania, 3 hours on a regular pay-per-view. You can't just do the same thing over and over. And they're trying to appeal to all audiences. If you didn't get it, cool. But don't. I saw some people saying, "Oh, that's the worst thing I've ever seen. It was terrible." No, it wasn't. I laughed at it.
That's the worst thing. If that's the worst thing you've ever seen, then you have a really weird, grading system of stuff that you've watched. That's all I can say. That's the worst thing you've ever seen. There are much worse wrestling related things that have happened in pro wrestling, and then there are worse television and movies that have happened compared to that. Now, the funny thing is, the Firefly Funhouse was completely different. It wasn't a match. It was John Cena going back through time, I guess, and living old moments and living moments that never even happened. And so this one was a little bit harder to grasp, obviously, and it wasn't really a match until the very end. Like, there was one move and that was it. But again, for what it was, just entertaining, fun, something to watch for 10, 15 minutes, whatever long it was, to just be entertained by it. And then for all the Bray Wyatt fans, he didn't get buried. Yay! He won. He won. He won whatever it was in the end. But I mean, they really eventually one day, I'm sure, are going to have footage backstage of all this stuff happening, and this would be just phenomenal to see.
Oh, I would love
how it all came together.
Firefly Funhouse. The fact that the Vince puppet said this is such good shit during it.
Yeah, there was.
That was amazing.
I read a tweet about it, and it's almost, and the tweet said it's almost as if they're in on the joke.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost as if Vince doesn't understand, you know, that Jon Moxley said that, or that he does say that. Like, I'm sure he's said it multiple times, and he knows, and he's self-aware, maybe not totally self-aware, obviously, but self-aware enough to have fun with it, to a degree. So, yeah, I saw a lot of people saying that one line made it worth it. The whole thing was worth it to have in there. And
I cracked up so hard when that line was delivered, but the rest of it was awesome too. Making John Cena become the prototype, having Bray Wyatt repeating lines that were said to John Cena by
Kurt Angle, and he channeled Bischoff at one point, and obviously they were doing a Hogan Cena kind of parallel, and then so again, another thing that was entertaining for what it was. It was entertaining. Was it a 5-star wrestling classic in the middle of the ring? Of course not. No, but it wasn't meant to be. And for a show like this, they needed to do these couple of things that they did to make it different. If they just did AJ Styles and Undertaker in the ring and Fiend and Cena in the ring, the whole weekend would have just been, Yeah. You know, there was just some good action in there. But now at least you got two things coming out of it that people are talking about that was somewhat entertaining, that a lot of people are probably going to go back and they're going to seek it out and they're going to watch it and form their own opinion on it. And I mean, in the end, it's still a company that's looking to promote itself and build up a viewer base, a fan base, and these are a couple of things that might do that moving forward.
Yeah, well, I was just going to make the point. That's something that if I had a friend who wasn't into wrestling, and I'm like, check this out, that's like one of the first things I send them. You don't send them like a match. Why do we like wrestling, right? It's not, I mean, part of it's the in-ring action, but there has to be a good story behind it. That's the story on crack. What we, especially the Firefly Funhouse,
something stronger than crack.
Yes, I felt like I was doing drugs when I was watching that. it was like Freddy Krueger mixed with an acid trip,
and they probably felt like that while they were filming it.
Oh yeah.
And so I think it got the desired effect on both ends. And I'm interested to see what they now do with the Fiend moving forward. Does he have this type of match, quote unquote, with multiple more people and start to bring people back? Imagine him doing that with Edge.
Oh yeah, that's
going back to, they bring him back to when he debuted as the guy who didn't talk and comes out of the crowd wearing a black trench coat and things, and then goes through Kazoo Edge with Christian and Rated R Superstar, and they have a Lita lookalike. Who knows? It opens up so many different avenues now potentially moving forward for that to happen. There's a bunch of guys that they could go through this whole progression of stuff with.
He obviously has to do it with Orton now, since Orton burned down the house.
Yeah, that's true. If you're going along the lines of people who wronged of Bray Wyatt, Randy Orton would have to be on the list. other people that are still around would be probably Roman, right? Roman,
Yeah.
a couple did some stuff to him, and those are the two that come to mind right off the bat. I'm sure there's a couple of others that we could dig up. So, yeah, I think there's a couple of ways that can go in the future, especially if they need to because of not being able to put on regular events for the next several weeks or a couple of months.
Yeah.
All right, let's roll through a couple of matches here that were not big parts of the show. Otis and Dolph Ziggler. In the end, Otis gets Mandy Rose, or Mandy Rose gets Otis. They kiss, and the crowd erupts. It was a Liz Macho Man-esque moment. Just everybody, people in tears. Oh man, good for Otis. Good for Otis.
Yeah. He's 1-0 in singles action, and he's got Mandy Rose. He won the girl in the end.
He's taken advantage of his opportunity too to shine as a singles guy. You look at Otis and Tucker. If you were just to look at the two of them, which one to you would be the bigger star? Just looking at them.
Yeah, Tucker from a look standpoint because he's a taller dude, like not as round as Otis.
Yeah, I mean, right, proportion better in the sense of of being an athlete. But Otis clearly has something else that's working for him, and we'll see how long the pairing goes with Mandy Rose. I'm sure the Otis Mandy versus Sonya Dolph match is around the corner.
Yeah.
Does that start to alienate Tucker? Do they break up? Another tag team breaking up probably down the line. So keep that in mind. Another match they had today that was kind of thrown together was Aleister Black and Bobby Lashley. I like, they made the right finish in Aleister Black winning, but I did like the way they did it in the sense that they had Lana kind of screw it up for Lashley, telling him to hit him with a spear as opposed to the Dominator. I think he was going to do whatever his. I think that's his finish still. So that at least gives you something moving forward with. Like another thing I saw on Twitter, and I hate saying this and not crediting who said it, but they made a good point in the fact that a lot of the results the last 2 days had a lot of furthering storylines, moving storylines ahead, which makes sense. You're not going to have as many blow-offs maybe in this type of situation. So there's a lot of things that are progressing out of it. Otis and Mandy progressing forward. Bobby Lashley, Lana's thing, progresses forward potentially. And there's some other whatever's happening with Sammy and Daniel Bryan. So there's a lot of things I think moving forward coming out of the results. Let's see, what else do we have to talk about here? They had the Raw Tag Team Championship match that was today. The Street Profits won. I don't think that was obviously not a surprise.
Not a surprise at all.
And the surprise at the end was Bianca Belair got involved and helped out her husband, Montez Ford. And one wonders if Bianca is going to be part of that package moving ahead on Raw, or if that was just a one-off and, hey, she was there, let's use her type of thing.
That might have even been planned for when they were going to do it in front of a crowd, figuring it's in Orlando, she's big with the NXT crowd, and if they acknowledge the relationship there, that would have been a big pop moment, I think, if it happened in front of a WrestleMania crowd. So they might have just said, hey, keep it in there, whatever.
Yeah, I would personally like to see her stay in NXT and now potentially match up with a new champion who we haven't gotten to yet. But she could. Well, here's the thing. So let's go to that. Charlotte is the new NXT Women's Champion. Match started off night 2. Was very good. They were very vocal in the ring. Rhea Ripley sold her ass off. She sold her knee off very well. To the point I turned the volume down on my TV because I was a little bit people across the way are like, what is that yelling and screaming coming from that apartment there? What's going on in there? Maybe you could say they overdid it a little bit given the circumstance, but I think it was good. I think it added to the match, and I think lot of people shaking their head at why you'd have Charlotte win. I think there's a couple of reasons why. I think they want to prop up NXT. Charlotte can go there and have matches with a new crop of people like Bianca Belair. How about Charlotte Flair versus Io Shirai? Those are a couple that stand out immediately. Does Ripley can stay on NXT and they can have another match down the road, and I would be perfectly fine with that. Maybe a best 2 out of 3 coming up between the two of them. I think we saw that they worked pretty well together, the two of them.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that they can do with Charlotte, and she can be that champion, like the old head champion, sort of in a similar manner. Remember when Cesaro was going back down to NXT and had the feud with Sami Zayn, where it's the young people just want to prove themselves against Charlotte, and she can hold the NXT belt for a long time and just keep fending off. That's how you could really build like a younger talent. You just have the unbeatable champion at the top, and the first young talent that takes him down is going to get made.
For sure. I mean, right? She can help put over a couple of new stars potentially, and again, everyone is so quick to with their judgment of, oh, Rhea Ripley lost. She just got buried. She lost. She got buried. So you don't understand what that means. Losing a match one time in a big situation to arguably the best women's wrestler of all time is not getting buried. Now, if you come back and she beats her again next week, and then 3 weeks later again loses again, okay, fine. You might have an argument. But she sold a knee injury. She had to tap out to a devastating move with a knee injury. She went toe-to-toe. And the story there is that the young, new NXT talent, 23 years old, just lost to the veteran performer. I mean, it's to me, I would think that they're going to continue with that story moving forward.
This will be fuel for her. You can tell like the true athletic story of she like understands where she went wrong. She's improving her game plan because, like you said, she's 23. That's a story that can be told. This is part of her evolution as a pro wrestler. In like a storyline sense.
I think people take results way too personally in terms of what it means. Like they get offended that their person didn't win the match, or they just think because they're getting buried, or because the other person is being handed everything because Charlotte's last name is Flair, or it's actually Fleer.
Yeah. By the way, she has a chance to be like what her dad was in the 80s now when he like pretty much made Sting. That's Charlotte's role now. She can take the NXT female Sting now.
I mean, there were probably a lot of people who watched this match tonight who still hadn't been watching NXT regularly, and it's the first time they saw Rhea Ripley have a match. And even though she didn't win, they come out of it going, "Okay, she's pretty legit. She's up there. Like, I can see her being on the Charlotte level moving forward." So, again, to steal a line, I think definitely from Bully Ray. I know that for a fact. Bully Ray will always say on Busted Open, this person went over, the other person got over.
Yeah.
So Charlotte went over. She won the match. Rhea Ripley got over as much as you can, obviously, in a fanless environment. But I think most viewers would watch that and be impressed by what she can do in the ring. And she clearly is super. She's got size. She's got strength. She has charisma. And she's like 18 years old. Yeah. 23, whatever she is. So she's got a lot of time in front of her. SmackDown Women's Championship stays with Bayley in the elimination match. They teased a little Sasha Bayley trouble because Bayley accidentally hit Sasha. Sasha got eliminated, and then Sasha came back and attacked Lacey, which allowed Bayley to win the match. So all is well and good in Sasha Bayley land, apparently. But man, wouldn't you love to see NXT TakeOver Brooklyn match again between the two of them at some point down the line?
Absolutely. And they might have had them have a falling out if this was in front of a crowd, because they know the crowd would get hot for that. And that might be one of the things that they're like, we can save this until we have butts back in the seats. My only criticism of the match was Sasha got eliminated and left and went to the back, then came back out. Why don't you just stay? And
I think that plays into the story. I think it's, at first she's upset, she lost, she just goes to the back, she's not happy potentially with Bayley or the whole situation, and then back there she realizes, you know what? No, that's my friend. I'm going to go out there and help.
Yeah.
In the heel type of way, go out and help out my friend. So I thought that was good, because I also at that point thought the same thing. I thought, oh, she's not out there, so this match is just going to end normally.
Yeah.
And boom, there she was. So I'm okay with that, and I think you hit on it. I think they're trying to probably prolong some things more than they would have originally, because of what is, again, the circumstances that surround everything, because they don't know when they're going to be able to truly move on. So I think they do want to push things as much as they can. And you saw other things they ended as quickly as they could, clearly, which we'll get to. Let's see. The only things we haven't talked about yet are Edge and Randy Orton, and the 2 World Championship matches. We'll start with the Last Man Standing match that went for almost 40 minutes, which I didn't notice that it went so long. People seem to be perturbed with the fact that it went that long. I didn't feel it. I watched it. I enjoyed it all the way through. I mean, they were just kicking the shit out of each other. Obviously smart that they were barely in the ring. And it had a fun start with Orton as a cameraman, which is something Edge, of course, has done a couple of times over the course of his career. So a little, nod to that. But man, I think the 2 of them did pretty much beat each other up over the course of that match, and I'm sure they took care of themselves as much as they could. But that was, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a pretty brutal match, and that's my 1A favorite match of the card. As I mentioned before, the ladder match was my favorite. But yeah, I didn't really feel like this is dragging at all. It was brutal the whole time. It was super intense. Would have been great with the crowd.
Storytelling. There was a story between the 2 of them that you could actually sink your teeth into and quote unquote believe that would lead to this, what you saw.
Yeah, and this was one of the matches where I was bummed that it wasn't going to have a crowd for it. It turned out this was one of the matches that needed the crowd least.
Once they got really in the back. At that point, it's like, at that point, first of all, they would never do that with a WrestleMania crowd, because the crowd would just be sitting there bored out of their mind. But given the circumstance, they played it off right. They just didn't end up in the parking lot. That was it. They went pretty far.
And then with I actually like the character work Edge did, just the emotions that he was able to convey during the end of the match after he won, where he didn't celebrate winning. He looked relieved and almost shocked that he still had it in him to give a concerto to Randy Orton. Almost
as if at the end, when it was over, he had a look of if okay, Randy, we can be friends again. Almost all right, it's over. I win.
Yeah.
So again, I would love to see them have another go at it, but I guess where do you go from a last man standing match? So I guess there really isn't anywhere else you can go. And I'll throw the question at you right now. Who do you want to see Edge work with next? Let's just say Edge is slated to work SummerSlam, whatever version of SummerSlam might happen. Would you want to see him with?
Ooh, that's a. Who else does he have some unfinished business with? And he's Raw, right? Yeah, he's Raw.
I feel like he can be anything he wants, because he's sort of, he just happened to go on Raw the night after the Rumble, basically. So I feel like a special dispensation can be made for him. Like he could do whatever he wants.
Like
and also, let's not forget, they can also do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah. Based on what you said before, I almost want to say the Fiend, because I'm thinking about all the possibilities of going back in time. You bring Christian back for some stuff. You bring Lita back for some stuff. And then think they have the Edge heads, right? Hawkins and Ryder.
Hawkins and Ryder are still around, so there are some ways that they could go with that.
It's just a shame that Matt Hardy's no longer with the company, because that would have been.
Jeff still is. So
yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that they could do there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be upset with that. I think though we hit on something as well with the Fiend, that there's still people that think about everybody. Just about everybody he has gone after has been for some sort of retribution from the past, or most of them have been. So I would say I'd like to see Edge and Rollins, because remember,
oh yeah,
they can go back to the time. Remember when the Authority was out of power, and John Cena was the only one who could bring them back. Rollins had Edge down in basically the concerto position, I think it was, threatening to blast him, to break his neck or whatever it was, and Cena was forced to say, the Authority's back.
Yeah.
They can bring that back around if they want, especially if we're thinking the Owens-Rollins thing is over, because Owens won, and that thing has been going on for a while as is. So I think Edge and Rollins, and especially the two of them, I'd like to see them have a one-on-one match in the ring. I think that would be I don't want to say a dream match, but it was a match that you didn't think was going to happen, obviously, because Rollins debuts on the main roster in November of 2012, and Edge retired a year and a half prior. So, yeah, I think that would be my vote.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, either one of those two options, it's probably going to be a home run.
All right, so we have two new world champions, Braun Strowman and Drew McIntyre. It's just, if you told me that 6 months ago, those were going to be your two champions at WrestleMania, I would believe you with McIntyre. I wouldn't believe you with Strowman, just because of where he's been. And obviously that wasn't the plan. The plan 2 weeks ago. And I wasn't shocked that Braun won, because to me, Goldberg was just there through WrestleMania, and that was it. And he was going to be gone. So they had to put they wanted to put the championship on two full-timers right now, especially now, because now at least they could have them be around and be involved in everything. So the Braun match was 2 minutes and 20 minutes, I think it was. I think it was spear, 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 power slam, power slam, power slam, power slam. 1, 2, 3. Now, granted, Braun kicked out of Braun. I don't think Goldberg ever went for a pin. I think Braun just kept getting up quickly from the spears, and then he signaled for the jackhammer, and that's when it turned into power slam, power slam, power slam. 1, 2, 3. What else could they do, right? And so I think they played that right, and in the end, the only decision that they really could make, unless you're going to argue that somebody else should have been in Braun's spot. If you're going to pick someone else to be in that spot, who would it have been to just get a surprise Universal Championship win? Who would have been believable?
Do they have it? Do they have anybody on the roster besides him?
The only other name I saw floating around that could be possible for that would be Big E, just because his and if I had the choice, if they came to me and said Braun Strowman or Big E comes out and beats Goldberg, I would have chose Big E, just for the pure freaking entertainment factor of Big E as being one of your top champions.
Him talking, especially if he beat Goldberg, the amount of trash he would have been able to talk afterwards, he would have been hilarious about it. Mm-hmm. But that also would have sort of put New Day in a weird place, especially when you that's an act that I would want to keep together for when the crowds come back, because that's a guaranteed But they could do the same thing that they did with Kofi, but I don't know if hot-shotting. I'd like to see Big E.
It worked with Kofi. The same dynamic wouldn't really work with Big E as much. I mean, not that Big E hasn't been in the company for a long time, but Kofi is kind of that elder statesman of the group, and it made sense for the two of them to be like, "Hey, man, like we're here for you to win the championship because you deserve it. You know, you've been here since 2007, I think, is when he debuted in WWE." So I think it worked that way. I think you're right. I think that they would want to wait for something like that down the line to get its full effect. Question is, how long does it take for Braun to drop the title to Roman?
I don't know. Like, how long is Roman going to be out because of immune concerns?
Well, that does make sense, because if he dropped out of WrestleMania the way he did, it would seem to reason that at this point he's just not going to go back until things are clear, right?
And if I'm in charge, I'm not putting the belt on him, because this is getting into how the virus is supposed to work, how it's supposed to go away a little bit during the summer, where then everything might start to get back to normal a little bit. But there's supposed to be a bad second wave next winter. Could they put Roman in another position where he gets strapped? He's got the title in the summer because it's all hunky-dory on the Corona front. And then it comes back and it's strong. And he has to drop the belt again, not to anybody.
Because they just want to be safe.
But for health concerns.
Right. Yeah, I can see them at this point saying, Roman, just stay home for as long as you want at this point. Yeah. I would say that would be the option. I think they say that's the option for anybody, that they do have that option. If you do not, it's what they said. If you do not want to come work, you don't have to. I'm sure it's, even I'm skeptical of that.
Oh, yeah.
You know what? Here's the thing. I think it's true. I think anybody can stay home if they want, but it's the idea that there's going to be people who won't want to do that because they want to be deemed reliable in that person and that leader, potentially. So that's why they'll want to work.
And yeah, you can stay home if you want, but they definitely notice who's still coming into work.
For sure.
And those people are going to get bumped up. So
that happens with any line of work. In a situation like this, I'm sure. Like if you're going to be rewarded for taking a risk, let's say.
Yeah.
As crappy as that could be, it's not fair for the other person who says, well, I don't feel safe, but things like that do get rewarded in the end. The other people shouldn't be punished, basically, is what we're saying. Like, you shouldn't lose your spot, but you might earn a spot if you take that little quote-unquote risk to stay involved. Again, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens over the next couple of weeks in terms of what they're able to put on television, and if they're able to do any new television in terms of matches. Because we know they can do television. They have the capabilities to put together a show with interviews and packages and old matches and all that. It's just a matter of, are they going to be able to progress the universe? Lastly, Drew McIntyre, your WWE champion, ends the entire weekend. Man, again, one of those typical Lesnar matches with a couple of suplexes, a couple of F5s. McIntyre kicked out at one, kicked out another time. 2 or 3 Claymores in a 1, 2, 3, and Drew McIntyre's your new WWE champion. I wasn't surprised once I saw that the match was going on last.
Yeah.
At that point, I couldn't imagine them ending this weekend, this type of show, without the fairy tale ending, without the good ending. I know 2 years ago Lesnar won and ended WrestleMania 34, but totally different situation to compare to. So not surprised, and it just makes you wonder now. Who's in line to face McIntyre down the line? Is it what heel is near the top of the card that can go after McIntyre? I'm thinking right now, and people on Raw heels. Rollins just lost to Kevin Owens. It doesn't mean, I guess, he can't go after the championship. Are we going to see McIntyre Lesnar again? Do you want to see that again in the right way? Maybe in a 12 to 15-minute match potentially with a little bit more meat on the bone.
Yeah, I think Lesnar's probably done for a little bit now. At least, like, I'm not sure how his contract works, but if I'm in charge, I wouldn't want to waste his appearances that much on no fan shows. The first name that did pop into my head was Rollins. I don't think he needed that win at WrestleMania and now go after Drew McIntyre. And the guy just beat Brock Lesnar, and he is huge. There's not another.
And Rollins has a good reason to say, "Give me the shot," because hey, I beat Brock Lesnar twice last year.
Yeah,
you only beat him once. Big whoop.
And also he has his whole crew that can make things interesting. Because now, if you have, because who else is a big heel? Who's a big heel on Raw? Like, body-wise big. There's not
Bobby
really.
Lashley.
And yeah, he's not in a position to challenge for that. He just lost to.
Right. And I think it would make sense, actually, Rollins and his group kind of making McIntyre the babyface champion be in peril, because now he's dealing with, a whole group of guys kind of take the title away. And that'd be a good way to build up the McIntyre title run.
Yeah, I think that's the only one that really works. Orton maybe eventually, but oh man,
hit that mute button, bro.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's our WrestleMania recap here, kind of our reactions, right after the fact, just about. Obviously, right after night 2, we had a little bit of time to think about night 1. Again, I think considering the circumstances, if I was going to give a grade to the whole weekend, I would give it like a B minus, just overall. I thought there was maybe more that they would have done to make the show different, especially in the regular matches in the ring. I thought maybe they would be a little more creative with camera angles and camera cuts and the way that they shot it, but they seem to basically do it the same way that they have been. Obviously, notwithstanding and things of that nature, the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse were very different, and the Last Man Standing match was different. So those three kind of stood out, obviously being different. Again, I don't know really what else that they could have done outside of what they did. So on the relative scale, B minus. And again, I'm not going to bother giving it a grade on the scale of the WrestleMania scale. It's just not. It's unproductive.
That's one thing I was thinking about. This might be the least rewatched Mania. When you think about you rewatch Manias every so often. Whenever I'm homesick, I'm rewatching old school wrestling. Like now, when you're in quarantine, you have nothing else to do. You watch old wrestling. If you're a wrestling fan, this WrestleMania is probably not going to be one a lot of people go back to.
Right.
I do think the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse will get a lot of rewatches, even in the future.
Oh, I'm sure those are already getting absolutely lit up on the YouTube and all the social media platforms. The highlights of those two, I'm sure, are going to be watched a lot, and I'm sure they will be touting the numbers that those videos, the views that those videos will be getting, and probably they should be. But yeah, I think you're right. This doesn't have much for a rewatch ability. Maybe a couple of years down the line, you go back and you look at it and you go, this is actually pretty good the way they did it, or this match was pretty good. But I think compared to what we're used to, obviously, it's not going to have that rewatchability. It's fun. It's funny that you bring that up, because that allows us to kind of segue in what we want to do for our next episode here of Just Another Wrestling Podcast. Figured because this WrestleMania wasn't like a normal WrestleMania, kind of lost all the pomp and circumstance, that we want to go back and we want to watch an old WrestleMania, and we'd like a little bit of help from the people listening, and in terms of which WrestleMania to go back and watch. We'll do it in watch-along form. We will watch the show. Me and Daryl will watch it together. We will talk, we'll have fun, and we'd obviously invite you to, if you have a lot more free time on your hands potentially, to fire up the WWE Network, watch the show, listen along with us. Even before we before we tape the show, you can send us in some thoughts on the show that we end up picking, which we'll try to get out there. So how we're going to do it is we're going to put a little poll up on the JAW Podcast Twitter account. At JAW Podcast, put up a poll, and the 4 choices are very simple. And I kept the 4 choices in kind of like an anniversary way, just so it's easier to figure out choices. So the choices are going to be WrestleMania 21, WrestleMania 16, which is WrestleMania 2000, which we just mentioned earlier in the show, WrestleMania 11, which we also mentioned actually maybe as one of the worst WrestleManias. Now that can be one of the better ones to watch along with though. And then WrestleMania 6, which obviously is Hogan Warrior from the Sky Dome. So those are the choices: 6, 11, 16/2000, because they call it a WrestleMania 2000, and 21 are going to be the options. And put the poll up for a couple of days and see what people decide that they would want to watch along with, and we will do it. How does that sound, Daryl?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So again, at JAW Podcast, that poll will go up probably after we sign off here. I'll probably put it up and have it last for a couple of days. So throw your vote in, and again, at D_Nuggets, and I'm at Sudikoff on Twitter, at JAW Podcast, the show account. And if you want to send an email in, you can as well at JAWPod, JAWPOD at gmail.com. And as you're listening right now, most likely you are listening on SoundCloud, but we are in the works for some exciting things moving forward that will probably move us off of SoundCloud and to several other platforms, and we'll come out with that information when it becomes official. But very excited at the potential of this show moving forward. Obviously know it's going to start pretty slow, as every kind of show does, starting from the ground, and hopefully we'll build up a pretty good base here, and we'll move forward. And if anything, you and I are having fun. That's that's all that matters, right?
It's something to do during quarantine.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that's going to do it. Happy WrestleMania weekend. It's in the books, and we will talk to you in a couple of days with our WrestleMania classic watch-along look back, and looking forward to that. Until then, everybody, stay safe, and good night from Chicago/New Jersey.